Congressman Adam Kinzinger, you want to make a prediction here for the new year? Do you think that with Democrats with a seat at the table, can you guys all work together?
I hope so. Maybe we can get infrastructure done, but they're going to focus on 2020 pretty quickly. And I predict a new term will be created. You know, we all know the term rhino.
Okay.
It's going to be dino.
Oh, interesting. All right. Here's Harris.
Thanks a lot, guys. We are going to start off with a Fox News alert on this special edition of Outnumbered Overtime, live from Dallas, Texas. I'm Harris Faulkner. I'm broadcasting live from the George W. Bush Presidential Center on the campus of Southern Methodist University, home to 43's Presidential Library and Policy Institute. A lot to show you this hour, including my behind-the-scenes access, and joining me, the sister of a Marine who made the ultimate sacrifice for his nation in Iraq. An incredible story which launched a movement to better the lives of our military servicemen and women and their families. But we begin with the news of the day. Florida, election officials there in the Sunshine State trying to meet a hard deadline this Thursday for a machine recount. You're watching it. They are counting ballots in the Senate and governor races. Broward County, which has been at the center of much of the recount, as you know, all the drama, began a machine recount just a short time ago. The controversial election supervisor, Brenda Snipes, says they will finish on time. As you know, there have been lawsuits, accusations, and finger-pointing. Democrat Senator Bill Nelson called on his opponent, Governor Rick Scott, to recuse himself from having any role in the recount process. And a judge ruled there was no evidence of voter fraud. The judge also telling the Scott and Nelson camps to cool it. Griff Jenkins, where it's very hot right now at the Board of Elections in Broward County. Griff, what's the latest?
Harris, fear not, they will get that recount done, according to Supervisor Snipes, as you mentioned. And let me just show you what you're looking at, because this video has been very compelling for the last 2 days. It's about as compelling as watching pandas or giraffes at the zoo. You're looking at the actual recount that has started in Broward County. These are the early votes. There's over 200,000 of them. They're going into those machines, and in the envelopes on top of the machines are the under and over votes that are being separated. That means that they either marked too many times or didn't mark at all on the governor, Senate, or Commissioner for Agriculture race. And those are being separated, put in bins, secured, because they will likely be used in a manual recount. Now, assuming Broward County gets through all of the bins, the early ones, the election day, and the mail-ins, they will then be judged on the Thursday recount on whether or not it's under that quarter percentage point. And that's when we get to the hand recount. But you mentioned Brenda Snipes, the supervisor here, under absolute scrutiny at the center of this firestorm. In fact, former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, tweeting that she should be removed. We talked to her a little earlier, and she said that, listen, she was aware of the tweet. She was aware that the governor was calling for her removal. Governor Jeb Bush obviously put her in that position, but she says she's run a good election campaign. There was also a little bit earlier under the supervision of the Broward County Sheriff's Office, taking ballots from Electoral Day being held in a cage in a warehouse just not far from here. That, of course, because of the court order from one of Governor Scott's lawsuits. Harris, back to you.
Wow. You liken this to pandas and giraffes at the zoo. Those are my favorite families. We got to get this done. America's got to have faith in its electoral system.
IFB.
All right. Griff, thank you very much. My first guest has had a front row seat to recount dramas like the one that's playing out right now in Florida. Joseph Clark served as the top attorney for Florida Secretary of State, remember, Katherine Harris, during the 2000 presidential recount. He joins me now from Coconut Grove, Florida. Does the election supervisor, Brenda Snipes, need an attorney right now?
Oh, I don't know whether she needs an attorney. I mean, she needs another job. For sure. Ooh. But unless someone feels that something criminal has been done, I don't think she needs an attorney for anything other than that. But I mean, the point that was raised by Governor Bush, I think simply is people need to have confidence in the process. And Ms. Snipes, Dr. Snipes, for whatever reason, doesn't seem able to perform as far as that's concerned. You know, when you go to the polls and vote, there's all kinds of formalities you go through. You have a good feeling when you leave the polls. You get your little I voted thing. You don't feel that you should sit around and have to worry for the next 2 or 3 weeks as to whether or not people are going to find votes in trunks of cars and in boxes and the like. I'm sure she's a very nice person. She seems like a nice person. But the voters of Broward County, the voters in the state of Florida, have no confidence that that office is being conducted properly. And it makes no sense. You shouldn't be sitting around 2 and 3 and 4 days after an election wondering about how many votes were counted or not counted. Makes no sense.
You know, she does have a history, Brenda Snipes, and there is illegality in her history. And that may not be what's playing out at this point. She says that she can get this done by the deadline, but why do you think she needs another job?
Because she doesn't do that one correctly. I mean, it's not being done correctly. This shouldn't happen. This is an embarrassment. I'm a Floridian. I'm proud to be a Floridian. And this is an embarrassment to have this happen. What happened in 2000 was really more caused by the structure of how our statewide vote counting is done and the responsibilities of supervisors of elections, but the legislature tried to correct it, and they took some very effective corrective steps, and now we have this mess, and it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. But I'll tell you what's more interesting to me. Go on, ma'am.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that to me the most interesting thing, I'm not actively involved in lawyering at all in this thing, and to me, the most impressive performance thus far, and I'm a registered Democrat, but the most impressive performance I've seen so far is the way Governor Scott has handled this. He has made sure that he is up front making all the comments. His lawyers are not in front of the cameras. He is keeping political pressure, judicial pressure on the process, and that makes a difference because judges read newspapers, judges watch TV, and judges are aware when people are watching what they do. All of that is very, very helpful. And I think at the end of the day, there aren't going to be any great surprises here. The process will work out, but it's ridiculous that it has had to go down this way.
Well, we are getting a lot from you today, including your political affiliation, which I had not planned to ask. But since you brought up that you're a Democrat and watching all of this, you say that this is very different from what happened in 2000. That was structural. What has gone wrong? Because part of the criticism for Brenda Snipes has been actually from people on your side of the political aisle, because she was a mess. At least at her direction, there was a mess in a previous Democrat primary. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I mean, there have been people on the Democrat side of the line that have been real victims in this situation.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I mean, the way my dad told me when I was a kid, that the party in power points with pride and the party out of power views with growing alarm. So, I mean, these people, they all have their talking points that are distributed from some central location. At least that's what happened in 2000. I think what happened with Dr. Snipes is I think the governor didn't really feel that he could remove her from office. I think he was sensitive to the fact that she had been appointed by Governor Bush, and also he didn't want to disrupt that appointment and the electoral process. But the fact is that the job just seems to be beyond her for whatever reason. She just can't do it.
Two questions about recusal and removal. So Governor Scott didn't previously remove her and has now in a position where people are asking whether or not he should recuse himself. What do you think about that?
I think that there's no reason for him to be approaching that issue. I don't think he can really do much of anything in this situation. He's the governor. And the fact of the matter is, at this point in time, I don't see recusal as being an issue because the fact of the matter is there are enough people looking at this process. We have judges involved. We have very fine lawyers involved. The people are looking at it as well. I don't think it's ever going to rise to an issue whether it makes any difference whatsoever whether the governor recuses himself. I think that's just a talking point for my fellow Democrats as all.
Real quickly, Joseph Clark, before I let you go, you were impressed, you said, by the way Governor Scott has handled this. I know what the law says about the 0.5, 0.3 difference in vote counts. Did this deserve another look in terms of a recount in your estimation?
The statute's pretty clear. You have to do what the statute says. Back in 2000, we had all these issues as to who had discretion and who didn't have discretion. So the legislature set up these bright lines. If you cross one, you have to do this. You cross another, you have to do that. What the governor has done, which I think is particularly good, is he is controlling the entire process from the point of view of his campaign. When someone speaks for the campaign, it's the candidate. And that's what the people want to hear. They want to hear from the man they elected. He's not allowing lawyers to, march in front of cameras and give little speeches. And he's keeping pressure on both the judicial system and the whole administrative system. And it's being done very well, in my opinion. I'm just talking about the strategy, not with respect to the substance of it.
Sure. Okay. A Democrat supporting a Republican Governor Rick Scott today on how things are being handled in a Florida recount. With your background, I really appreciate your expertise and your input today. Joseph Clark, thank you. That we did not expect to get a host of information there. Let's move on now to the next Fox story that is topping the news at this hour. Crews are fighting that deadly wildfire raging across California. Actually, there's more than one. Let's start with the Camp Fire in the northern part of the state, the most destructive in California history. And now a grim new milestone. Claudia, showdown is looming, as you know. Lawmakers return for the lame duck session now. Border wall funding, the Mueller probe, among a couple of the big issues on tap for them. What can we expect Capitol Hill to accomplish? And is there a risk of a partial government shutdown? Plus, we'll be taking you on a tour of the George W. Bush Presidential Center right here on the campus of Southern Methodist University. Stay. Congress is back in session today for a high-stakes lame duck session. Republicans are facing a test on delivering on President Trump's promise to fund the border wall, which could result in a partial government shutdown. Meanwhile, Democrats say they're going to push to try to protect the Mueller investigation. Let's bring in Democrat Congressman John Garamendi of the House Armed Services Committee now. First of all, Congressman Garamendi, I want to start with the fires because I know about 25 miles away from you is a district that is still burning out of control. What does your state need right now?
Well, we need what the president actually did last night, and that is to make it a major federal disaster area, bringing immediate.
Yeah, you heard the president talking about foresting responsibility that goes along with that vegetation that you're talking about. So you do have a place where Democrats and Republicans obviously can work together on that. The president leading the way with that conversation. He took some criticism for it. But I hear you saying the same things. It's ironic. Let's move on. Let's talk about the lame duck session now that's coming up, because I really want to focus in on what does get done. We have some things we need. We're in an enrollment period right now for health care, for instance.
Exactly. Well, part of this is the federal government under the Trump administration has pulled back advertising for the various state exchanges. And people just simply don't know what might be available, even that they have to sign up. So one of the things that should be happening immediately, and it certainly is in California, and I would hope other states are doing it, and that is to backfill from the budget and appropriation cuts that were made at the federal level. As we go forward, we really need to make the Affordable Care Act work. And one of the principal things is the present law needs to be strengthened that all insurance companies must provide insurance regardless of pre-existing conditions. Secondly, we have to get at the drug issue. There are examples across the board of extraordinary price increases in drugs that are not justified by either advertising or research, but simply by greed. So those are all things that can and must be done immediately. Can we do it in the lame duck? Why not? We ought to work across the aisle. These are issues that Democrats ran on, and so did Republicans. And so why don't we just shore this up?
I want to ask just specifically now, if we can drill down. I've had you on with some of your political opposites at the same time, even on this very program, and you guys have talked. Who across the aisle can you work with on infrastructure in particular? Who across the aisle can you work with on health care?
Well, certainly the moderate Republicans, the traditional Republicans, we know that they're talking about it. There are men and women in the Republican caucus who have been talking about how to fund infrastructure. We had Delaney on our side, and I can't recall the name of the Republicans, but he had 3 or 4 Republicans that are signed up on his side on funding infrastructure, basically using the repatriation of foreign earnings. Those are things we can do. With regard to forest safety, we actually have a bipartisan solution that is now law. It was passed last spring in the omnibus emergency appropriations. That changes the way in which the Forest Service is funded. Basically saying there's one pot of money for forest management, thinning the forest, taking care of the forest, another one for firefighting. These things have been done. With regard to the health care issue, clearly the Republicans in this campaign began to talk about the need to protect people who have pre-existing conditions. Democrats made that our major
Absolutely.
issue.
I'm going to have to step in there.
Sure.
All right. And one that you didn't mention is President Trump. And the infrastructure was a place that he said that he really wanted to get going on. He was the person who actually got the ball rolling this summer on health care. And then you started to hear Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell talk about these things and pre-existing conditions. It will be interesting. You don't have a lot of time.
Sure.
Let's see how not lame we can make the session. Good to see you.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Harris. Bye-bye.
All right, back here in Dallas, Texas. I spent the early part of the day, with the executive director of the George W. Bush Institute. She gave me a special behind-the-scenes look, all access, at key features here inside America's 13th presidential library and museum. Watch. What is in this building?
Well, all of President Bush's records from the White House, all the records of the staff. So there are 200 million emails that are archived here that the National Archives and Records Administration has to keep, all the paper records, and all the artifacts, all the gifts that were given to them while they were in office.
That came into play during the Kavanaugh hearings.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
Right.
Because previous to that, documents were requested. So did they come from here?
They did. This is a piece of the steel beams from the World Trade Center that obviously is a centerpiece of this exhibit. And then on the wall behind, you have the name of everybody who died in the 9/11 attacks. And a reminder of the minute by minute that happened that morning.
Defending Freedom gets a huge display here. This is a big room.
It is. So obviously, defending freedom was an issue that President Bush always talked about. But once 9/11 happened, it became even more important to really, number one, defend our own country, and number two, help support the spread of democracy around the world. And so everything you see here is about the war on terror and all the efforts behind that. But then it really goes into supporting dissidents and democracies around the world. One of the biggest issues we continue to work on at the Bush Center is supporting our nation's veterans. And President Bush has always said that he wants to dedicate the rest of his life to supporting veterans. It was the hardest decision he ever had to make, was to send troops into battle. And so he honors them in that way by the work we do to support veterans. So we work on mental health issues with wounded warriors and how to make sure they're accessing care appropriately. We run a leadership program for people working on veterans issues to make sure that they're providing leadership in their community. They're some of the best leaders we have in this country. Former members of the military. This is an exact replica of the Oval Office. From the size of everything in the Oval Office, of the room itself, to all of the furniture, the rug, the paintings, the phone on the desk, and who's on speed dial. Wow. It's all just like it was when President Bush was in the Oval Office.
So much American history packed into one place here at the museum in Dallas. It was an unforgettable experience getting to tour some of the exhibits. So glad we got a chance to do that and then show it to you. Let's move on. President Trump's new acting attorney general is facing new scrutiny today. A state has filed. President Trump's new acting attorney general, Matthew Whitaker, is under fire today. The state of Maryland has filed an injunction claiming he's not the legitimate acting AG. And the state of Maryland also says this: Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein should have been promoted to that job instead. Catherine Herridge is live in Washington. I'm so curious to know why Maryland wants to do the president's job of filling a role. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Harris. This morning, the state of Maryland filed these court papers challenging Whitaker's appointment as acting attorney general. The legal challenge comes as part of an existing Obamacare-related lawsuit. State says the deputy, Rod Rosenstein, who is also a former Maryland U.S. attorney, should be the acting attorney general. And it notes that Rosenstein, unlike Whitaker, is Senate confirmed. Meantime, on Capitol Hill, Dianne Feinstein, ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, called for an emergency hearing with Whitaker and former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Feinstein does not have the power to schedule the hearing and must rely on the committee's Republican chairman, Chuck Grassley. A short time ago, Grassley said he has no problem with Whitaker's negative comments about the special counsel as long as they were made as a private citizen, adding Whitaker is undergoing an ethics review as Democrats continue to rail against the appointment.
No matter what the Trump Justice Department says, there is no acceptable justification for this appointment.
Whitaker is going to ask the ethics the ethics people whether he should be recused. So I think that answers it. Doesn't matter what the Democrats think. If he's going through that process, that's going to answer that question.
But the White House and Justice Department officials say the Whitaker appointment is legal based on legislation that was passed by Congress called the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, allowing the president to make temporary appointments.
No question. The president and the Department of Justice leadership has confidence in Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker, look, he has a full and legal authority under the Vacancy Reform Act of 1998, where if it's someone that's been a senior official as well as has been there for more than 90 days, could serve as acting attorney general.
We heard from a handful of analysts this morning, and they are divided, saying the issue is not settled law, Harris.
I'm glad you brought up that part of the law that says the president can do this under the act. It's also my understanding that it can happen. The list of things is if the person resigns. And that's exactly what happened here. At the president's request, there was a resignation tendered. So he should be able to make that temporary appointment, as you say. Catherine, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Defense Secretary James Mattis, we have been told, is now headed to Texas. He'll be here tomorrow, down by the border, to meet with U.S. troops. It's the largest of the migrant caravans now approaching the halfway point on its journey to the United States. So we're told it's about 10 days away or so. At its current pace, Fox News predicts the caravan will get here in just a little bit more than a week. This is some people at the U.S. border cities are reportedly are warning that they are not prepared to deal with potentially thousands of people showing up, including some Texas towns. Let's bring in Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General. Great to see you. Fabulous to be in your home state.
Yeah.
My dad is even on set watching today in Dallas, so it's a big day. Let's talk about what's coming in the league. Thank you very much. Let's talk about what's coming to our southern border. We know we've got about a week and a half or so before these people start to show up and possibly try to claim asylum. Legally, what are you prepared to do?
Look, I think you're right. There are cities that would be overwhelmed, but I talked to the president before the election. He assured us, the governor, the lieutenant governor, our senators, that he was not going to let these people cross in, that they would be stopped before they cross the border. Obviously, if that happens, if they do come across, it creates an incentive for other people to do the very same thing. So I feel assured that that will not happen.
Are you concerned at this point, as other caravans are gathering, that our relationships with the southern countries are not all they could be? They are crossing several countries to get just to Mexico and then get here.
No, it appears that we have worked with Mexico to some degree. Obviously, we could use more help in having them stopped at their border. So, yeah, there's still work to be done with that relationship. As you said, they've done a few things, but they could certainly do more.
Yeah, you've got Guatemala, other countries where people are coming from. So tell me what happens when they reach these towns. And you know, we've been talking about the potential of thousands of people coming at the same time and trying to get through those ports of entry.
Yeah, I think you're going to see Border Patrol along with the help of the U.S. military. Obviously, the military can't detain them, but the Border Patrol will, I think, do their best to keep these people from crossing in. And my understanding was they were going to try to set up some type of tent cities outside of the border and keep these people actually coming in.
The president has said that. The Pentagon says that they will only be building tents for the Border Patrol and others who play a supporting role. What kind of resources does this take up to have people crossing over illegally? I understand the detention centers are already full.
Look, this has been our struggle for years in Texas, and I think that's why you hear the president talking about the wall and providing ways to stop this permanently, so we're not on a daily basis struggling with stopping these people from coming into our state and other states. So yeah, this definitely takes up Texas resources. It has for years, and it takes up federal resources, which is why, I think Congress should do something about this permanently, because it is a struggle for us every day.
Attorney General Paxton, when these people do come in and you talk about the resources that they take, would you support a government shutdown over this issue of funding the wall?
I don't particularly like government shutdowns, but it is, I think, an issue that should be at the top of the priority list for both the president, which I think it is, and Congress. And it has been frustrating that for years and years and years, decades, that these issues have been ignored, and we do not have the best immigration policy. Look, we need immigrants. We need workers in Texas. We're short workers. We just need an immigration policy that makes sense, and we don't need people crossing our border. We don't know who they are or where they've come from and what kind of crimes they've committed.
Wow, that is such a balanced approach that you're talking about, because this economy is on fire for job creation, and your state is constantly pulling people now from California. I've been reading about it. Quick last word from you.
Well, there's no doubt we're desperate for good workers, but we need to make sure that we're bringing the people here that we need, and at the same time make sure that we're keeping the people out that are dangerous to our people, who are committing crimes, who are a risk, who may be terrorists. So there is definitely a balance here. Congress needs to do their job, and I'm thankful to Trump that he is focused on this issue and made it one of his top priorities.
Attorney General of the great state of Texas, Ken Paxton, great to have you on the program, and thanks for the warm welcome to the state.
Hey, enjoy our state. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Let's talk about another state here in the Southwest, Arizona. Kyrsten Sinema has pulled off a win in that close Senate race. We waited almost a week to find out what was going on there, denying Republicans an opportunity to widen their majority in the Senate. They still have the majority, but they didn't get an extra seat in Arizona. So should Democrats use Sinema's success as a guide for 2020? What worked, what didn't work? Outnumbered Overtime continues live from Dallas. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Live from Dallas, Texas today. Kyrsten Sinema's win in Arizona proved Democrats have the potential to flip traditionally red state Senate seats. But while Sinema found success with moderate voters, Congressman Beto O'Rourke failed in his appeal to progressive Texans, even though he raised all that money there. This is the party is mulling a path to victory for 2020. What worked and what didn't? Power panel now. Let's slide them in. Leslie Marshall, Democrat strategist and radio host, and David Webb, host of the David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot. Great to see you both today. David, I want to start with you. Democrats, what worked for Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona?
What worked for Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona, Harris, was what was missing. What was missing was outward support from the McCain wing of the party, from Jeff Flake and those who support him. The Republicans didn't come together in Arizona. They didn't take the pragmatism of winning the race first, then having the debate over various policies within the Republican Party. Therefore, she was able to eke out a narrow win, but I wouldn't take it as a full bellwether that this is suddenly going to portend a sweep by the Democrats in the Senate in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because I was watching Twitter yesterday, and Senator Flake was one of the first to wish Kyrsten Sinema a congratulations. What's happening down there, Leslie?
Well, I think one of the things, and I would disagree with David, I think it breaks down to three things. One, Arizona has become far more purple than Texas has. Texas is still very, very red. Two, she had the message of common ground. And we're seeing in states that are more purple or are in between red and blue, more of this desire to have this overlap, this common ground. I'm going to get things done. I'm going to work with not just the Democrats as a Democrat, but with the Republicans. And then third, there is the female element. You have to remember that not only did she win Maricopa County, which is one of the more liberal and certainly more populated counties, but she also won McSally's district in and around Tucson, which is typically a very red area. So we're seeing changing demographics, and we're seeing women not very happy with a lot of what's going on from the president and his administration.
So two things there. Having sat down with both of these candidates for a town hall just a couple of months ago, Sinema is actually from Tucson, so that's her home. You talk about going purple, a message of common ground. David, Kyrsten Sinema has voted with President Trump 60% of the time. Even if she didn't make a message known, that's a lot for a Democrat.
No, it is a lot for a Democrat, but it was also for her politically expedient to move forward. If you look at the types of votes she cast, those were votes where there was already, call it the common ground agreement. Where she departs from the president, because it's not just about the numbers, is in the types of policies she has written about. If you look at her report on Israel, where she supports a two-state solution, where she supports the idea that there should be an Israel and a Palestine and a demilitarized Palestine, that is in contrast with the Hamas leadership that's there. So it's one thing to cast a vote. It's one thing to do the numbers, but when you look at the importance of the policies and their scope, she certainly departs from the American people and from what is the realistic solution when Hamas or Palestinian leaders don't recognize Israel.
You know, it's interesting, too, to hear Leslie talking about how purple she thinks Arizona is. Establishment Republicans, you say, didn't support the candidate. Are you looking at a red state that may not be so red? Just a yes or no for you, David.
I think it's purple based on the way people have voted, but it's kind of trended that way with McCain and with Flake. And Arizonans need to make a choice. Which policies secure their future economically? From a security perspective on their borders, Democrats haven't delivered either.
David Webb, Leslie Marshall, thank you very much.
Great to see you.
Thank you, Harris.
To her, every day is Memorial Day. How the death of her Marine brother in Iraq launched an entire movement to help America's service members and their families. A special Heroes on the Home Front right here from the Bush Presidential Center. Stay close.
Death toll in the California wildfires expected to rise, with many people still missing. We are live in California with the latest. Plus, it's freshman orientation on Capitol Hill for new members as challenges to Nancy Pelosi's speakership continue. We're going to be asking Chris Starwalt about all of that. And Mexican drug lord El Chapo is in a U.S. court today, and there are already delays. We'll tell you why on the Daily Briefing coming up.
Live now back in Dallas. On set with me, a special Heroes on the Home Front guest, Ryan Mannion, graduate. But he stood between the fire and safety.
He did. He exposed himself twice on his final day of life to pull two of his wounded teammates back that had been shot. And it was at his third time exposing himself that he was shot and killed. And he received the Silver Star for his actions that day.
I know you say that every day is Memorial Day for you, and supporting your brother's idea of togetherness in this country wasn't just a foundation, it's become a movement. Why?
It has. I think, you know, we revert back to the 5 words that Travis spoke before he left. And he had shared with my husband when my husband asked why he had to go back. He said 5 words, if not me, then who? And we took those 5 words and we wanted to make sure that each and every American, both those that serve and don't serve, took those 5 words and applied them to their daily lives. And I think it resonates with people.
You know, I often in military talks, I've written a book that's military based on my own experience as a dependent. I've said to people that it's about 1% to 3% of those who serve the rest of the nation at any given time. It's in that percentage range. Which means the rest of the country may not know what's going on with military service and the wider aspects of the military family.
Absolutely, and that's everything that we're trying to drive forward at the Travis Mannion Foundation. These men and women who have selflessly served our country are coming back home, and they are still incredible examples of what servant leadership is all about. So we want to make sure that we're providing them with those opportunities to get into communities and work with the communities around them.
I don't know if you saw it, but just today the president has put out what the billions of dollars in funding for the military will go to. Mental health. is on that list with a huge amount of money. I don't remember it ever being like that as a focus. That's one of his focuses.
Absolutely, and it should be. We very much see ourselves as a non-clinical approach to mental health. We have a very holistic approach to how we empower veterans to continue to thrive in their post-military career.
All right. This evening, you will be graduating here at the Presidential Center of George W. Bush through its leadership program. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in a few hours. More Outnumbered in just a